I spent weeks planning the perfect Christmas surprise for my wife. But when I walked through our door on Christmas night, I found her unwrapping a different kind of present. Her lover, half naked in our living room, under the tree I decorated. She had no idea I'd been planning my own surprise for months. My name is Connor Ashfield, and I thought I had it all figured out. 6 years of marriage, 9 years together total, and I genuinely believed Vivian and I were building something solid. Sure, we weren't perfect, no couple eyes, but I loved her with everything I had. I'm a software security consultant, the kind of guy who solves problems for a living, who believes in planning ahead and making things work. Viv always said I was dependable, the rock she could lean on. Looking back now, I realized dependable was just another word for boring in her mind. For 3 months, I'd been planning the perfect Christmas surprise. I took on extra freelance contracts, working late into the night after my regular job, saving every dollar I could. $15,000. That's what I managed to scrape together for a dream vacation to the Maldives, a place she'd mentioned once. Almost casually 2 years ago while scrolling through Instagram. She probably didn't even remember saying it, but I did. I printed the tickets, tucked them inside a custom glass ornament, and hung it on our Christmas tree. Every time I walked past that tree, I'd smile, imagining her face when she opened it. But while I was planning surprises, Vivian was pulling away. It started 8 months ago, so gradually I almost didn't notice. The way she'd come home later and later, always with some excuse about a demanding new client at the luxury hotel chain where she worked in marketing. Her phone became an extension of her hand, always face down on the table, new passwords I didn't know. She'd flinch when I touched her shoulder. Our conversations became transactional bills, groceries, whose turn it was to take out the trash. The intimacy we once had evaporated like morning fog, and I told myself it was just stress. It's just a rough patch. The Maldives would fix everything. She mentioned him in passing, this new client named Vaughn, who was investing heavily in the hotel properties. Important meetings, she'd say. Networking events that ran late into the night. I'd pack her lunch. In the morning, kiss her goodbye, and watch her leave in those expensive new dresses I didn't remember her buying. When I asked about the clothes, she laughed it off. Work wardrobe, necessary for impressing high-end clients. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. Christmas Eve, I told her I had to leave town for an emergency client meeting. A complete lie. I'd be back Christmas night with champagne and flowers, ready to start our romantic evening. When I told her I wouldn't return until the 26th, and something shifted in her expression. Relief. Pure, undisguised relief. She kissed me goodbye at the door, but her lips barely touched mine, and her eyes were already somewhere else. I drove away, watching her in the rearview mirror, standing in our doorway, and for the first time, I let myself wonder if I was losing her. I had no idea I'd already lost her months ago. Christmas night, 9 o'clock. I pulled into our driveway. With a bouquet of red roses on the passenger seat and a bottle of champagne chilling in a bag. The neighborhood was quiet. Houses glowing with warm lights and decorated trees visible through windows. Our house looked beautiful-eyed. Spent an entire weekend stringing lights along the roof, hanging wreaths, making everything perfect. But there was something wrong. A black BMW sat in our driveway, sleek and expensive, definitely not a car I recognized. My stomach tightened, but I pushed the feeling down. Maybe one of her friends stopped by. Maybe it was nothing. I grabbed the flowers and champagne, practicing my surprise speech in my head as I walked to the front door. I opened it quietly, wanting to catch her off guard in the best way possible. The living room was dimmed, just the Christmas tree lights casting colored shadows across the walls. I heard laughter, her laughter, and then a man's voice, low and intimate. Music played softly in the background, something jazzy and romantic that I definitely hadn't put on our playlist. I walked into the living room, and my entire world shattered. Vivian was on our couch in red lingerie I'd never seen before, straddling a man who was shirtless, his hands on her waist. They were under the Christmas tree I'd decorated, surrounded by wrapping paper and wine glasses, completely lost in each other. The glass ornament, my ornament with the Maldives tickets, had fallen to the floor near their feet, rolled away like it meant nothing. The champagne bottle slipped from my hand and exploded against the hardwood floor. Vivian screamed and scrambled off him, grabbing for her robe. The man stood up slowly, running his hand through his hair, and he wasn't even embarrassed, like I'd interrupted something important. My wife stood there, clutching her robe closed, her face cycling through shock, panic, and then something worse, defiance. "Connor," she breathed. "You were supposed to be gone until the 26th, not I'm sorry. Not this isn't what it looks like." Just anger that I'd ruined her plan. "On Christmas," a voice came out broken, barely a whisper. "In our home, under the tree I put up." The man stepped forward, buttoning his shirt with casual confidence. "Von Hendricks," he said, like we were at a business meeting. "I'm guessing you're the husband. Awkward timing, man." Vivian's face hardened. The panic disappeared, replaced by something cold I'd never seen before. "This has been going on for 9 months, Connor. 9 months. I've been planning to leave you after the holidays anyway. You just accelerated the timeline. 9 months. While I was working extra hours to save for our dream vacation, she was building a life with someone else." Vaughn smirked, crossing his arms. "She's been staying at my penthouse most nights. Those late work events? Yeah, that was us." I looked at Vivian, searching for any sign of the woman I married. "I've been miserable for years," she said flatly. "You're boring, Connor. Safe, predictable. I need more than what you can give me." They left around midnight. Vivian grabbed a suitcase she'd apparently packed days ago, hidden in our guest room closet. Vaughn draped his arm over her shoulders like he owned her, and she let him. As they walked out, she turned back one last time. "My lawyer will contact you. I want half of everything." The door closed, and I was alone in the wreckage of my life. I didn't sleep that night. Sat in the living room surrounded by broken glass and spilled champagne, staring at that fallen ornament. The Maldives tickets were soaked, ruined. I picked them up, and something inside me shifted. The devastation was still there, crushing my chest until I could barely breathe. But underneath it, a cold clarity began to form. I wasn't just hurt. I was angry. And anger, I realized, could be useful. By morning, I'd stopped crying. I made coffee, strong and black, and started documenting everything. I took photos of the scene before cleaning it up, the wine glasses with lipstick stains, the wrapping paper, everything exactly as they'd left it. As I was picking up the cushions from the couch, I found something they'd forgotten in their rush to leave. Vivian's iPad slipped between the cushions. She'd been in such a panic she'd left it behind. I opened it, expecting her usual password. She'd changed everything on her phone, but the iPad still had my birthday as the code. The irony wasn't lost on me. Inside was a goldmine. Months of messages between her and Vaughn, time-stamped and detailed. Explicit photos they'd taken in our bedroom while I was at work. Videos I couldn't bring myself to watch. But more than that, there were conversations about money, about strategy. Vivian and Vaughn discussing how to hide assets before the divorce, how to maximize her settlement, which accounts to drain first. My cybersecurity background kicked into gear. I started digging deeper, following digital trails like I did for my clients who'd been hacked. What I found made my blood run cold. Vivian had opened 3 credit cards in both our names. Over the past 6 months, cards I knew nothing about. She'd charged over $40,000 on them. Luxury handbags, expensive dinners, a weekend trip to Miami. All of it going toward her affair with Vaughn. She'd also transferred $30,000 from our joint savings account to an offshore account I'd never seen before. But the most interesting discovery came when I started researching Von Hendricks himself. He wasn't just some wealthy investor. He was married to Margot Hendricks, the CEO of the entire hotel chain where Vivian worked. His wife was one of the most powerful businesswomen in the state, and Vaughn had been using company resources for his affair. Company hotel rooms, company cars, expense accounts that weren't his to use. I sat back in my chair, the full picture finally coming together. Vivian thought she was trading up, moving from a boring husband to a wealthy lover. She had no idea Vaughn had been lying to her too. And neither of them had any idea what I was capable of when someone tried to destroy me. Vivian filed for divorce on December 28th, just 3 days after Christmas. Her lawyer sent a demand letter that made my blood boil. She wanted half the house, half the savings, including the money I'd earned from those extra freelance jobs and alimony, for at least 5 years. The paperwork claimed emotional abandonment and financial control, painting me as some kind of tyrant who'd trapped her in a loveless marriage. Vaughn had hired her the best divorce attorney money could buy, so she bragged in a text to her sister that I intercepted from the iPad. She was confident, arrogant even. I stayed quiet. When she texted asking about dividing our belongings, I responded with short, broken messages. I don't know what to do. I'm devastated. I can't believe this is happening. I played the part of the shattered husband perfectly, and she ate it up. In messages to Vaughn, she actually laughed about how pathetic I seemed. That made what came next so much easier. My attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia, who specialized in fraud cases, looked at my evidence and actually smiled. "This is the most comprehensive documentation I've seen in 20 years, she said. She's buried herself. We filed a counterpetition that included fraud charges for the credit cards, evidence of adultery with timestamps and locations, and a demand for the return of all stolen funds. We also filed a civil suit for the emotional distress and financial damages her deception had caused. But I wasn't done. I'd spent 2 weeks building a complete dossier on Vaughn Hendricks' expense reports showing misuse of corporate funds. Security footage from hotel cameras showing him and Vivian in company properties. Email trails discussing his affair using company servers. Everything documented, time-stamped, cross-referenced. Then I did something Vivian never expected from boring, predictable Connor. I reached out to Margot Hendricks. Not directly, that would be too obvious. I sent an anonymous package to her personal attorney with every piece of evidence I'd compiled. Photos, messages, financial records, the works. Inside, I included a simple note. Your husband has been conducting an affair with an employee using company resources. Thought you should know before it becomes a legal liability for the company. Mediation was scheduled for January 5th. Vivian arrived with Vaughn at her side, which was completely inappropriate, but she didn't care. They were both dressed expensively, her in a designer suit I'm sure Vaughn bought, him in what looked like a $3,000 outfit. They walked in holding hands, confident, almost gleeful. Vivian's lawyer started with her demands, and she sat there smirking at me across the table like she'd already won. My attorney waited until they finished. Then she opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder 3 inches thick. Before we discuss Mrs. Ashfield's demands, Patricia said calmly, we need to address some irregularities. She slid the first set of photos across the table, the ones from Christmas night. Vivian's face went white. Then came the messages, the financial records, the credit card statements. Vaughn's confidence cracked. Those messages were private, he snapped. I smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. Vaughn, I'm curious, does your wife Margot know you're here? The color drained from Vaughn's face so fast, I thought he might pass out. Vivian's head snapped toward him, confusion flooding her expression. What wife? She whispered. Vaughn, what is he talking about? You told me you were divorced. Vaughn's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I leaned forward, savoring every second. He's married to Margot Hendricks Vivian. Your CEO, the woman who signs your paychecks, are used to. Anyway. The penthouse you've been staying at? Company property. That Bora Bora trip he promised you. That's the corporate leadership retreat scheduled for next month. He was planning to bring you as his assistant. Vivian stood up so fast her chair fell backward. You lied to me? Her voice was shaking, rising. Everything you said was a lie? Viv, let me explain, Vaughn started, reaching for her arm. She slapped him hard. The sound echoed in the conference room and even the lawyers flinched. You used me. You destroyed my marriage for nothing. You destroyed your own marriage, I said quietly. He just helped. My attorney continued like nothing had happened, sliding another document across the table. Mr. Ashfield sent a comprehensive report to Mrs. Hendricks last week. She's filed for divorce and pressed charges for corporate fraud. The hotel chain is conducting a full internal investigation into Mr. Hendricks' misuse of company resources. Vaughn's lawyer started gathering papers, clearly realizing this was a sinking ship. Vaughn himself looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. You don't understand, he said desperately. Margot and I had an arrangement. An arrangement she's now denying in her sworn deposition, Patricia interrupted. She's also provided evidence of 3 other affairs you conducted using company resources. The board is voting tomorrow on your termination and pursuing criminal charges. Vivian sank back into her chair, her hands covering her face. When she looked up, mascara was running down her cheeks. Connor, please. I made a mistake. I was confused. He manipulated me. Stop. I held up my hand. You knew exactly what you were doing. You planned this? You opened credit cards in my name, stole our savings, and brought your lover into our home on Christmas. You don't get to play victim now. The mediation ended with Vivian signing away any claim to alimony or the house. The judge, once he saw the evidence, wasn't sympathetic. She was ordered to repay every dollar of the fraudulent charges, plus my legal fees. The house was mine. She'd have to buy out her share at market value, which she couldn't afford, so I got it for pennies on the dollar. Within 2 weeks, Vivienne was fired. Margot Hendricks personally called the board and had her terminated for violation of ethics policies. She was blacklisted in the luxury hotel industry. Everyone knew everyone, and word spread fast. Vaughn lost everything in his divorce. Margot's prenup was ironclad, and she took the penthouse, the investments, everything. He was facing criminal investigations, and other affairs surfaced during the discovery process. I watched their world crumble, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. January 20th, exactly 1 month after Christmas, my doorbell rang at 8 in the evening. I knew who it was before I opened the door. Vivian stood on my porch, low porch looking, nothing like the confident woman who'd walked out with Vaughn's arm around her. Her hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore sweatpants and an old jacket, no makeup, eyes red and swollen from crying. "Connor, please," she said before I could speak. "I need to talk to you. I made a terrible mistake. Vaughn lied to me, I'm a victim in this, just like you." I stood in the doorway, not letting her in. "You're not a victim, Vivian. You made choices. Every single day for 9 months, you made choices." I was seduced. He promised me everything, and I was stupid enough to believe him. But I see clearly now. What we had was real. We can fix this. Please, Connor, I have nothing. No job, no money, nowhere to go. Vaughn won't even return my calls. Looking at her, I felt something I didn't expect. Not anger, not even satisfaction. Just emptiness. The woman I'd loved didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never had. "You told me I was boring," I said quietly. "Safe, predictable. You were right about one thing. I am predictable. I keep my promises." Exactly. "We promised to love each other. I promised to love you, and I did. You promised the same, and you broke that promise. But I also promised to protect myself, and that's a promise I'm keeping now." Her tears turned to anger, just like I knew they would. "You destroyed my life. You sent that information to Margot. You ruined my career. You took everything from me. No, Vivian, you destroyed your own life. I just made sure you faced the consequences of your choices. There's a difference." She tried to push past me into the house, but I stepped back and closed the door, leaving just enough space to speak through. "This was your home. You threw it away for a lie. Don't come back here again." 6 months later, I'm standing in that same living room as another Christmas approaches. The house feels different now, lighter somehow. I redecorated, got rid of furniture that carried too many memories, painted the walls a different color. Those Maldives tickets were refundable, and I used the money for a solo trip to Iceland instead. I needed to find myself again, and somewhere between the frozen waterfalls and the northern lights, I did. I met someone there, actually. Petra, a colleague from a Nordic security conference. We've been talking, taking things incredibly slow. She's visiting this week, and there's no pressure, no games. Just honest conversation and genuine connection. I'm learning what healthy actually feels like. I heard through mutual friends that Vivian moved back in with her parents in another state. She's working retail, trying to rebuild from nothing. Vaughn is still drowning in lawsuits, his reputation destroyed, his licenses revoked. The The best revenge wasn't destroying them. It was choosing myself and building something real.